there is no comp for being able to pick something up and look at it. And the marketing, the way that the industry has sort of like crossover of marketing and algorithm has cut out so much of discovery. So with a movie theater, you can see a poster in a light box. You can see a description on a website. You can see a description in what would have been a newspaper and to think, oh, that looks interesting. It is not like marketed specifically to you because of a bottom line.
This is the Box Office Podcast. I'm Rebecca Pahle, Deputy Editor at Box Office Pro, the pulse of theatrical exhibition. I am joined here today by box office analyst Jesse Rifkin. Jesse, it's been a few months since you've been on the podcast. How have you been? And more importantly, I guess, what have you seen in theaters recently?
I've been good. The last movie I saw in theaters was The Creator, which, stunning visually, amazing special effects, possible Best Visual Effects Academy Awards nominee contender there. The actual film, though, I'd give very, very mixed reviews. Next film I'm seeing is next week, and I'm going to see Taylor Swift's Eras Tour concert film, me and tens of millions of my closest friends.
Yep. Well, we'll be asking you about that later on in the episode. Once we go over the box office, trying to suss out what number Taylor Swift is actually going to get to in her opening weekend. We have an interview with three people, actually. One of them is the director of the film Only in Theaters, which is about the history and the legacy of the Laemmle Theatres cinema chain, which has been essential to keeping art house and our house community alive in Los Angeles. Greg Laemmle, we also have on the podcast today. And returning guest Maggie Mackay. I don't know if you'll remember, I think she's been on one or two times before, but she was in the process of funding for and building in Eagle Rock, Los Angeles, Vidiots. It's a video store slash screening room. So it was fun to delve into Laemmle and to the importance of, I mean, I know we're not the physical media podcast, but I feel like there's a lot of overlap between movie theater people and people who hold on to physical media and still like it. So it's a good conversation and pretty much tailor-made for Box Office Podcast. That and more in a bit. In news items, the big piece of news kind of in our inside baseball industry area is that out of the NATO Fall Summit last week, we do have some new NATO executive board members. Newly elected as the chair of the executive board of directors at NATO is Bob Bagby, CEO and president of B&B Theatres, the largest family-owned cinema chain in the North American market. As vice chair, we have Harkins Theatres president and CEO Mike Bowers. And for the Cinema Foundation, which of course, among all it does, most recently has spearheaded the National Cinema Day, Santikos Theatres CEO Tim Handren was elected chair of the Cinema Foundation. And as vice chair, there is Salt Lake Film Society's Tori A. Baker, who is retaining her role. One last bit of news we have here regarding the Taylor Swift concert film, The Eras Tour. Not out yet as we're recording. It'll be a few days till it comes out. It'll be a few hours until it comes out. If you're listening when this episode comes out on Thursday, but it doesn't matter. Already, the film has passed the $100 million mark in pre-sales. So that's not just AMC, which is distributed the film. It's AMC and all the other exhibitors that are working with Variance Films to program. But yeah, I don't have my tickets. I kind of want to see something else just to see what it's like. And any cinema owners out there who are planning any parties or events, shoot us a DM on LinkedIn or something, send something to numbers@boxoffice.com because we really are interested in seeing the creative ways that the cinema community rises to the enormous demand that comes from the Taylor Swiftie community. So, Jesse, as you covered box office over this weekend, it's kind of calm before the storm. We're out of the kind of September doldrums and not yet to the craziness that Taylor Swift is going to going to bring to the box office next weekend. The main release out wide from Universal was Exorcist Believer, first in a planned 3-part series from director David Gordon Green, who did a Halloween series for Universal a few years back. What was the performance here?
Well, as you just mentioned, they've already greenlit it as a trilogy. That might have been a mistake. It opened at $26 million, which is on the lower end of our $24 to $32 million prediction range. We'll see how it holds on. Maybe it will end up doing great in the long run, but it opened below several other major post-pandemic horror sequels, including Halloween Ends, Scream 6, The Nun 2, Insidious: The Red Door.
And Halloween Ends came out day and date. Like, it came out below a film that went day and date. I mean, granted, that was Halloween Ends was the third one in the franchise, so it had a little bit more, interest building up to it. But yeah.
But still, that was released simultaneously in cinemas and on Peacock. That made about $40 million. This had theatrical exclusivity, but it only made about $26 million. That's 34% below.
Moving on down the top 5. At spot number 2, we have from Paramount, Paw Patrol, the Mighty movie. How do you assess the box office for this one, Jesse? Because it's kind of like, I feel like Paw Patrol is a franchise that parents know about. And as a franchise, they know the names, all the dogs and the stuffed animals and stuff. And as someone who does not have kids, I'm just kind of like, yeah, Paw Patrol. That sounds like a thing. So what were we expecting from it, given the fact that it is a sequel to a first Paw Patrol film that came out? And how did it perform?
Yes, this was its sophomore frame. It fell minus 48%, which is actually slightly better than the prior film, 2021's original Paw Patrol, the movie, which fell slightly more at 49%.
How does the Paw Patrol franchise, I mean, how much of that box office gross from the first one came from international markets? Like, is this a case of something that just has a popularity globally that can maybe pad a medium performance in North America? Not that we're saying that that's the case here, but...
Yeah, definitely. Actually, the original film, again, from 2 years ago, earned 72% of its global gross from overseas. So far, this one has earned 55% from overseas, which is less, but that's a little misleading because some major overseas markets still have yet to release, including Spain, France, UK, and Japan.
Polar opposite from Paw Patrol. In third place, Saw X. I have heard good things. It's had better word of mouth than the other ones. It's coming off that debut weekend last week. I mean, it's actually doing pretty well compared to the other films in the franchise regarding that second week drop.
Yes. So again, this is the 10th film in the franchise. That's why it's called Saw X, the Roman numeral for 10. And this was its sophomore weekend. It dropped only 55%, which is actually better and milder than 6 of the 9.
For a horror movie, that's not bad. They tend to be really front-loaded, especially this time of year. Right?
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Okay, so that's a solid performance. Maybe we'll see continued.
You might even say it's a solid performance.
I might say that, but you are far more likely to say it, Jesse. Then in fourth place, we have a film that both of us have seen, The Creator, in its second week, down 57% to 6.1 million domestic. And then at number 5 for the second consecutive week, congratulations to our friends at Fathom Events, who traditionally do event cinema programming. They have moved into specialty distribution with this film, The Blind, about the patriarch from the Duck Dynasty TV show. It came in at spot number 5 for this second week in a row.
Yeah, and that's
despite having nowhere near the screen count of other releases.
Yeah, here's how low that screen count was. It was in about 1,300 theaters this weekend. That's less than 1/3 of Paw Patrol. So as a result, it was a surprise when it opened in 5th place last weekend. I think it was also a surprise when it stayed in the top 5 this weekend. It dropped only 28%. That's pretty mild. For comparison, for a few other faith-based Christian-themed films of the past year or two, 28% is a better hold than American Underdog, which fell 33%, Father Stew, which dropped 38%, or Jesus Revolution, which declined 46%. So this is holding on pretty well.
Wow. And the weekend gross here that we're looking at, 3.2 million, it's not huge numbers when you compare it to, spots 1 through 4 on the list. But, we don't need every film to be reaching those tens of millions every week. It's smaller films like this that are targeted to a more niche audience that will spread the word and get other people to come in. That's what the industry needs in order to remain healthy. Speaking of scrappy films that are making their way into the market despite everything stacked against them, no, I'm kidding. It's a Taylor Swift film that was always going to be an absolute behemoth. We know it's already grossed $100 million in pre-sales. The question here, Jesse, I think that probably a lot of people in exhibition and elsewhere are asking is this going to be $100 million opening weekend?
I think yes. Now, what I'm about to say is just anecdotal. It's not based on statistics or anything, but I got my ticket for this upcoming Saturday, and basically every showtime was sold out or only a single-digit number of seats left.
We've had other big concert films. Usually lately it's been event cinema releases from outfits like Fathom Events or Trafalgar. There have been recent ones that were successful from like BTS and Metallica, but those aren't getting the wide releases. We've had one from Justin Bieber in like 2012 that is currently the record holder, I believe, for a concert film. I don't know what it made, but I know that Taylor Swift is going to break that record on its opening weekend. I mean, it's tough to predict this one because there's really nothing that is comparable to it.
No, as you mentioned, Justin Bieber's 2011 concert film, Never Say Never, is the highest grossing concert film theatrically ever at $73 million. Michael Jackson's posthumous 2009 film, This Is It, is just a hair behind at $72 million.
Okay, so Taylor Swift's already out-earned both of those.
Yes, out-earned both of those lifetime grosses in its opening weekend alone. We are really in uncharted waters here.
What I'm interested in seeing here is something that's going to contribute to its box office domination. It is screening in IMAX screens in about 45 markets. The numbers we have are about 625 IMAX screens. So yeah, I'm curious to see how this film is going to do specifically in premium formats, whether that's IMAX or proprietary large format or whatever the case is. I bet it's going to be absolutely bonkers. In terms of other films hitting the market, we were supposed to have Exorcist Believer come out this upcoming week. Obviously, they moved back from their Friday the 13th date to get out of Taylor Swift's way. We really have nothing going on in terms of counter programming this week. There's a re-release of The Hunger Games coming up. There's a Fathom Events Dragon Ball Z event coming up, but no one wanted to go toe-to-toe with Taylor Swift. So thank you so much, as always, for joining us here. And after this short break, we will be hearing from Raphael Sbarge, director of Only in Theaters, along with documentary subject Greg Laemmle and exhibitor Maggie Mackay of Vidiots. I feel weird saying this. You can check it out on DVD or on streaming now, but go to onlyintheaters.com. It is still doing the kind of festival roadshow circuit, so Only in Theaters could still be playing in theaters near you. We'll be back to hear more about that film right after this break. So, Raphael, you started off with this movie kind of not knowing what the story of it was going to be. And it was kind of about the Laemmle chain, the Laemmle family, and the legacy. But then it turned into you chronicling the possibility of the chain being sold. And then the pandemic happens and you're doing a completely different movie. You said 2.5 years you'd been working on this, all told. How did you come to develop this as a feature in the first place?
It started as a sort of the legacy story kind of captured my imagination initially. The fact that there's been a Laemmle in the movie business since there's been a movie business, and this sort of tie back to the origins of Hollywood. Carl Laemmle was a first cousin, obviously a founder of Universal Pictures, also the man who basically went up against the Edison Trust and went to the Supreme Court and obviously gave us independent cinema because of him. Greg's grandfather and great uncle both started this theater in 1938. They, have had this giant outsized influence. And the theaters, that is the Laemmle Theatres, have inspired so many people. And they are in Los Angeles, not just a movie theater, but really sort of a cultural institution. But they're also primarily a family business. And that's kind of what pulled me in. I had no idea what I was signing up for, at least initially, and I didn't know it was going to take this long. But what happened was that as we were working on this, not only did a series of kind of remarkable and extraordinary things occur, but what also happened is that we backed into this larger conversation about the future of exhibition and where are we. And Greg and I have done a lot of interviews, and I was so excited to actually sort of introduce Maggie into this conversation, because Maggie did the unbelievable thing of kind of opening a movie theater in the midst, or sort of right as the pandemic kind of settled. And this was extraordinary, not just because of what she's done and how she's programmed it and how well it's been received, but it's also been tied to then this physical media, which has then been this, the origins of their origin story, that is, DVDs and VHS, cassettes. And so that's a component of their business model. And these theaters are so important, and that they thrive is so important for audiences, for filmmakers. And in this case, here you have two extraordinary people who run theaters, who program them. So I just thought it was an interesting opportunity for all of us to talk, particularly because of all the ties.
Greg, I mean, the film kind of ends right around the time when you were legally able to open up to moviegoers once again. Yeah, New York and LA, I think you could open gyms before movie theaters. It was really nuts. How's the time since then been? Obviously, for a while there were not many films that hit theaters, but hopefully it's bounced back to a certain extent.
Yes, I mean, it has bounced back. We're still not seeing the same number of wide release films as there were pre-pandemic. And there's probably a number of factors that are involved there. And then, there's also certain audience segments that have not returned. So the older audience, which historically was, very supportive of art films, is I think, an audience that probably had greater COVID fears during that initial time of the pandemic, or of the reopening. Certainly the fact that we had, two major waves after that, with the Delta wave and the Omicron wave, scared many of them, back into their homes. And look, and I think it is also an audience that probably was not familiar with streaming beforehand and discovered it. And they're maybe playing with their new little toy. But I think ultimately the better experience of seeing a movie in movie theaters is going to win out over time. So for those of us that have the ability to get through this, we're going to see a return to, movie going, not exactly the way it used to be, but we're going to see more movies in movie theaters. We're already seeing a return to having an exclusive theatrical window, which we did not have for all of 2021. And we're going to rebuild this business. We're now 2 years past the reopening, and we still get some people that are coming back for the first time to see a movie in a movie theater that now they have not been in for 3 or 4 years. And they're reminded about how wonderful this is. And, we hope that every time someone comes back, that they are going to, that's not just one thing that they tried and they're going back into their streaming world, that they are back and seeing movies. But it has to happen one moviegoer at a time.
One of my favorite parts of the documentary was seeing, all the GMs and just the people who were their lives had been so touched and impacted by their time at Laemmle. And it's, that really is, it's not just about a building and a screen and a movie.
No, it is a whole community, and for the staff at the theater, that's their family in many cases, or as close to family as you get, and their regular patrons who they know and recognize, and so all those interactions are really super important. Yes, I can understand for patrons who are coming back for the first time, it may be difficult. Are they dealing with understaffed theaters because it's hard to find employees, or is the theater understaffed because, we do need to have certain economy of scale, theaters that aren't operating the same hours as they used to operate before. So maybe it's harder to find a showtime. These aren't easy, these are problems. The solutions aren't necessarily easy, but there are solutions. And certainly getting more people back is going to have a feedback loop. Distributors are going to advertise again. They've stopped you open the LA Times, you don't see any ads. And when you don't see any ads in the LA Times, all of a sudden you're not seeing reviews in the LA Times. I wonder how that happened. So how are people finding out what movies, to see? There's a lot of chicken and egg stuff here. And we just, it's going to be, like I said, one step at a time towards getting it back to what it used to look like pre-pandemic.
Yeah, movie going begets movie going.
That is correct.
I mean, one of the things, it was brought up in the documentary, TV was supposed to have killed the movie theater, and then, any number of things are supposed to have killed the movie-going experience off, including home video and DVDs and VHS. I mean, that was perceived as a big threat to cinema. Now physical media has also kind of had a comeback. There's a lot of talk as streaming kind of, they put stuff up, they take stuff away. You have to be a member of like 18 different streaming platforms to get everything you want. Like, it's not the replacement for cable that it was touted as early in the day. Just as, someone who I'm personally interested in physical media, what's the reception been from people since you got Vidiots opened and got the crowd started to come in?
I mean, we can point to hard data, which is that we're renting over 1,300 movies a week. So that's the answer. People are bringing their families in. We've got little kids.
Oh, nice.
Renting movies, bringing them back, talking to our clerks, going to the movies, full groups of teenagers getting dropped off by a parent with their babysitting money in the exact same way that I grew up going to the movies. And it's not nostalgic, and it's not a throwback. It's not a flash in the pan. It's something that people missed and they want, and it's very vibrant and totally alive. There's nothing sort of sentimental about it. I mean, people are sentimental, and it's a very gratifying experience. I thought initially in the first week we were open, we broke all of our physical media rental records. So within the first 2 days, we'd rented more movies than our founders had at their peak in 1985. And their peak, the busiest day they ever had, was right around the 92 uprising or any kind of big weather event outside of earthquakes, which are unpredictable. But usually those are the big rental waves. And we broke all those records within the first week of opening in June 2023. But I thought, this feels like a novelty. They're going to come and do it. They're going to forget to return their stuff. They might rent again in a few months over winter break. But, the point was to make the library accessible to the public, no matter what. And we have all these other revenue streams, the theater, the beer and wine, the sponsorship, the marketing opportunities for distributors and studios. And that will keep the video store open no matter what. I was wrong. They rented, they returned, they rent, they return, they're coming back. It's worked. No, we've only increased our numbers. We started at about 1,000 a week. We went to 1,200. Now we could even be over 1,400 a week now. I don't know. And it's not just movies. There's certainly, the numbers are pointing into the direction of movies that are very hard to find, movies that are not streaming. But people are definitely renting TV series that would cost. We had a teenage kid who, she's a regular. She's one of my favorites. She loves anime. To rent a series that she is obsessed with on a streaming service would cost her $3 or $4 an episode. She's rented the entire series for that same amount of money. So, which is not equitable, not affordable, and not sustainable. And it's excluding countless numbers of people who just simply can't afford that. So now what we've done is created this super fan so that when there's a new anime movie that Greg programs, she's going to be tracking on it. She's going to go see it at Laemmle. It's you're creating an ecosystem and supporting an ecosystem, and then creating the next generation of fans who are the only hope for this art form. And that's what we were hoping we would see at Vidiots. And now we've proven out that it works.
Yeah, it's like the audience is out there. You just have to, it's funny you should talk about, anime and that sort of thing. Over the past few years, we've definitely seen anime films and concert films and like Bollywood films in some cases, just doing incredibly well theatrically. Greg, there's definitely been, while there were not that many movies to show, a lot of exhibitors kind of got mixed up the formula a bit in terms of programming, experimenting with different genres to try to reach some of those audiences who were able to come back. How's your approach to programming changed since before all this?
I don't know that it has. I mean, we've always wanted to, we want to present films to the audience, and we want to present things that we like and things that we think they'll like. We're probably a little more engaged with event cinema programming right now, because if you do show something and it feels like it's, this is your one opportunity, people are inclined to make it a priority to come out. All of a sudden, when a film is playing for a full week with 3 shows a day, there's, I'll get to it. And they never get to it. So using event cinema, as an opportunity, is something that we're doing a lot more of. And if you want to look at like 2022, a hit film like RRR, which of course, played in the Bollywood circuit and then sort of disappeared and then was brought back as an event cinema program. And the response was so amazing that it turned back into a regular release. And now it's morphed back to an event cinema. I mean, I'm sure Maggie could put RRR on, tomorrow and draw a full house of people who just want to see it again.
We've been doing it every other month. We sell out in a couple hours.
The whole time it was on Netflix. Granted, dubbed version, Hindi, not Tagalog, but still it was there. I mean, it's a movie you have to see in a movie. I mean, I watched it on Netflix just because it's fun no matter what. And again, just to get back to what ancillary is not the enemy. Ancillary creates fans. I remember being at an advanced screening of Slumdog Millionaire at USC. And I figured out college students, whatever, they don't know Danny Boyle. And I brought up, Shallow Grave and some of his earlier films that had not been, big hits theatrically. And everybody raised their hand. They had seen these prior films. So it created an opportunity for that film really to break through and become the crossover hit that it was. We can have a discussion which film is better, why didn't that? But sometimes that just happens. Snatch was a huge hit theatrically after Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels was a failure because a lot of people rented it, loved it, and were really primed to see the next film from that filmmaker.
And that's because of home media and I think in many cases physical media, like the films may be out there and available on whatever streaming platform, but it's not the same as browsing as at a physical location.
Yeah, the problem with the streaming platforms is you're reliant on the algorithm that they decide what you're like. And you say, I like this. And then they recommend something that's completely not related because they want to push you to see that film. You go to Vidiots and you talk to the clerk, I really love this film. They're going to tell you exactly what film you should rent next. And you're going to like it.
There's also something there is no comp for being able to pick something up and look at it. And the marketing, the way that the industry has sort of like crossover of marketing and algorithm has cut out so much of discovery. So with a movie theater, you can see a poster in a light box. You can see a description on a website. You can see a description in what would have been a newspaper and to think, oh, that looks interesting. It is not like marketed specifically to you because of a bottom line. And in the video store in particular, for someone like me, when I was growing up, I was bringing home movies that were so not made for me. They were not made for me. They were not being marketed to me. But because I liked David Byrne's weird suit in Stop Making Sense, that became my favorite movie when I was 11. I liked Cher's crazy hair on the cover of the box art for Moonstruck. I didn't know who Cher was. I was 10. I mean, maybe I knew who she was as a singer, but that became my favorite movie. But that movie was not made for a 10-year-old. But what that did was turn me into a film fan. And now look what I do for a living. My daughter is 10. Her favorite movie is American Werewolf in London. The movie is not made for her, but she loves that movie. And what it did was get her on a path to something that never would have been offered to her in a modern age of watching movies.
And there is sort of a, the algorithm has been sort of a form of dumbing down, right? I mean, like, I also, as a filmmaker, I've had friends who basically say, "Hey, my film's on Netflix," and it's like throwing another suitcase on a raging forest fire. I mean, it's just you can't find it. Movie theaters, specifically, art house theaters that are neighborhood based and have kind of the gentle hand of kind of curation, or at least someone sort of considering bringing it to their audience, thinking about what their audience would like, and or also in this case Maggie's physical media. These are ways in, and it's so important. It's so important for the filmmaker, just for the filmmaker. How do you break through the noise? How do you get seen or heard? How do you bubble up? If you can't get a review, and it's almost impossible to get a review now, then you really count on the theaters, the film festivals, and the physical media.
It's so crazy to me watching the movie that you have the hub of cinema. You have so many great directors and screenwriters and producers, coming through LA. And just the fact that that Laemmle was the place to see an art house film or an indie film or a foreign film, that without Laemmle, that would not have been available to people.
Look, I certainly don't want to take sole credit. It's evolved over time. I mean, yeah, sure. In the 60s, when my grandfather was just operating the Los Feliz Theater, and a lot of the other art houses, or what were art houses at that time, had switched over to showing porn. It may have been the only place. Now we have, then AFI started up with the festival and the cinema, morphing into the Cinematheque. UCLA started doing film programming, and now you have the Vidiots Theater, and you have a lot of other. So I think Los Angeles actually has a really vibrant film scene. It's spread out, and obviously, if you're not living close to the Eagle or to one of these other venues, it makes life a little more difficult. But that's part of why we've pursued a strategy of putting a theater, in various parts of the county, so that someone who does live in the Santa Clarita Valley, can see, anime, and they can see Bottoms, and they can see all kinds of stuff that never made it out to that part of the world before.
And I would say, like, from my perspective, the Laemmle, when I moved to Los Angeles 25 years ago, I lived near a Laemmle, and the Laemmle was what made up for the fact that I knew no one. I was from another universe moving here. But because I grew up in an age where the movie theater and the video store were the beating heart of the neighborhood, those were the first places I went to when I moved here, not knowing anybody. I didn't have a job. I didn't know anybody. I just showed up, and I went to my local movie theater, and I went to my local video store. And that's not a coincidence that I'm now on this podcast, because my exposure to Laemmle, my feelings about Los Angeles, the way that I started my life here led to the work that I do now. The same way that being in the video store in New York City as a little kid led me to California. I mean, it's all part of a thread, but those spaces are, for some of us, what a church would be, or a synagogue, or they are the center.
Raphael, as someone who's kind of came from maybe the outside of things, obviously you love cinema and movies and everything, but getting such a deep dive in this and getting really into the history of it with a family who's been around for the whole thing, was there anything that surprised you about it, or that a rabbit hole that you really didn't see coming?
What was really sort of exciting was the directors and the people who were so excited to talk to me and us about how the Laemmle was sort of their way in. And if it wasn't the Laemmle Theater, then it was a theater like the Laemmle Theater. At the end of the day, the fact that this family won the French Legion of Honor for what they did to, support the French New Wave, how Truffaut and Agnes Varda and Bergman would come for lunch. These are sort of, again, it's kind of astounding. But again, that's this sort of family ethos, this family business. And I just kept, look, I'm aware of the fact. I mean, look, here we are at the moment, still on strike, fighting against these giant multinational corporate-based shareholder, answering companies, and there's no human element in it. There's none. And we are essentially literally fighting for the human element. No, you can't use AI. No, you have to actually have writers and actors. And no, you can't scan our likeness and pay us a half a day. I don't mean to get into the strike stuff, but the point is that the fight is about the human element, right? And maintaining that. And here's a theater. Here's a family that has been entirely about the human element. They have literally made things possible for film. I mean, Ava DuVernay, when she spoke to us, I mean, she had won Sundance, and she called Greg and said, hey, give me some shows. And because of that, then she got New York. And look, she was wildly talented. Any number of things would have happened. But that actually being able to call and speak to a theater owner and then actually be able to figure out a way to get some traction, that's everything. And, the ice face of this industry sometimes it's impossible to penetrate. So the fact that you could call, as I did, the Laemmle Theater and then get Greg Laemmle on the phone, essentially, and he would then talk to me about how to be able to show my movie. That's what really, there are all these big fancy things, like all the names and stuff like that, the Hollywood element, but the human element, again, is what really continues to sort of keep me so grounded.
That's why we can't get into AI programming, I know, is something that people are talking about. And Raphael, for people who want to see the movie, where can they go? It's out on DVD from Kino Lorber now?
Yes, the film is on physical media, and you can rent it at Vidiots, which is fantastic.
The copy's signed by the Laemmles and Raphael.
It's particularly special, right? So yes, it is on Amazon, and we are continuing to kind of be in theaters. We were at the Glendale Film Festival last night. We're going to be in Edmonton. We're going to be in Chicago. So it continues to be in theaters. We made a movie called Only in Theaters. And
I was like, I can't believe I missed it in theaters, but I'm glad it's coming back. So look up Only in Theaters to find out where the road show's going.
onlyintheaters.com, right? You can find it there. But most importantly, the hope is that the film then leads anyone seeing it to be reminded to go back to a theater. Go see a theater go see a movie at Laemmle and Vidiots, and know that you're also not just giving yourself a treat, which is to kind of be in a room with a bunch of other people enjoying a screen that's much bigger than you, with no interruptions, and where the laughs and the gasps and the cries and the all of that are amplified by the fact that we're in a room together, and the movie is just better. Popcorn's probably better than what you can make at home too. So.
This has been the 198th episode of the Box Office Podcast. We're closing in on 200, guys. It feels very strange. But thank you to Greg Laemmle, Maggie Mackay, and Raphael Sbarge, as well as Jesse Rifkin, my co-host for this episode. The Box Office Podcast is co-produced by Box Office Pro, the Box Office Company, and Record Edit Podcast. Check in next week for a breakdown of Taylor Swift's opening weekend. I know it's something that everyone in the industry is really looking forward to, her making a lot of money here. So we'll be excited to see that come to fruition. Thanks once again, and see you next week.